Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, I'm Bava Metzia, daf Yud Aleph. We are going to begin on Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Mastis, Metzia. If you see someone running after a object which was found, Achar tzvit shavor, after a deer with a broken leg, Achar goizelei shloparchu, little birds that are not able to fly. V'omer zachsali sadi zachsalo, and he says, I want my field to acquire it. So he's able to be kind through the means of what's called a kinyan chatzer. And we're going to understand exactly the parameters of all this. Hayatzvi rots, let's say that deer is running, kedarko, in its normal healthy manner, or shaygoizos mafrichin, the birds are flying all over the place. That doesn't do anything. Says the Gemara. So Rabbi Shmuel, it's dafka, when can you be kind in the reisha is only if you're mamish there. That's when the king the chatzah will work. What do you mean? I don't understand. Why do you have to physically be there? It's kind of even without your consent. It's just if it's in your property, you be kind of these different things that are not easy to move around. Because that's true, but it depends. Hani mili b'chatzer hamishtameres. That's only when we're dealing with a chatzer which is properly guarded and watched with, let's say, with walls and all this. Then these animals, once they're there, they're there. However, if we're dealing with just a court which is not mishtameres, in lo, if not, not. So, question 11. Naful Metzia lachatzero himsach shehi oimid b'tzad tzedei l'knoisa. So it's all totally, if it's a chatzer mishtameres, you don't have to be there. But we're talking about this case of our Mishnah where it's a chatzer which is ein mishtameres, so you have to physically be there to be like the guarder to watch over this. How do we know that this is the din? Now, when it comes to such a field that's not properly watched, guarded, let's say without great walls, so then how do we know that it depends if you're physically watching it? This person's standing in a city. He's not in his field. He's in a city. And then he reminds himself, the Oidiani, that I have a bundle of grain that's in it's in my field, and poalim shachuhu, my workers made a mistake and they forgot it over there. Lo yehe shikha, I do not want this to be considered as shikha, and that I don't have rights to it because I didn't forget about it. I know all about it. My poalim forgot about it in the field. So yachol yehe shikha, you would think it doesn't. You would think it's taka. It's not going to be shikha, and his words mean something. So the dik is basada v'shachachta of a little bit ear. It's only in the field, but not in the city. In other words, says Rashi, im shachachta b'vuacha min asada habishicha. It's considered to be shicha when you're going from the field. V'lo shachachta mishenichnasta le'ir. Not when you're coming into your city. Basically, what it's saying is, the fact is that you have to be in the field to be able to make that type of a statement. So Haguf Akasha. Amrit originally said Yachal lo yehe shicha. You would think, actually maybe I haven't read it backwards because it's so confusing. Besad of a shachachta v'lo be'ir. That's what it says, that it'll be shicha in the field, but not in the city, which means that that means that not in the city, which means his words do work. Haguf Akasha. Amrit Yachal yehe shicha havishicha. We said you would think his statement is that it should not be shikha. So, but we're going to bring a pasuk to show otherwise. You would think so, but Talmud Olam, we're going to show you a pasuk otherwise, which means we're trying to use the pasuk to show that it's still shikha and his words don't mean anything. But notably, Gemara b'sad v'shachachta v'le'ir al maloi havishicha. Why it's just a little bit counterintuitive because just the simple reading doesn't make sense. Because we're basically saying that taka, his words do mean something, and therefore it's not considered to be shicha. So how do you understand this? This is how it's supposed to be read. If it's sadeh, if you're in a field and it's forgotten from the onset, then it's shicha. Zohar, let's say you left it with intent, and then you forgot, ein shicha. So then at that point it's not shicha. My timer to give on the koi gaba, because if the owner is in the field, havi chatzero, it's like his chatzer, v'zachsale, and therefore he can still be zoicha. Once he's in the city, I feel zacha save shachuach. When he's already in the city, it doesn't make any difference if he remembers it. Havi shicha, it's still considered to be shicha. My time to leisa gabi de lazachile. So it's the opposite. It says Rashi, Zachar shehanicho sham midaito. Let's say you remember that you left it there, and then afterwards you forgot, they poalim, because the workers messed up, lo havishicha. That's only because you were there. That if the owner was dekoi gabo, so then it's considered to work. Why? Because he's considered to be, like, even let's say it's a chatzar shnei, but he's there so he can be zoichet. And therefore, if he remembered, even if the poalim forgot, it's not considered to be shicha because of his remembrance. Mashein kain, when he's in the city, it doesn't make any difference. Even if he remembers, it will not work because he has to be oimid al gabah. He would need to be there, which is the same point as what we're trying to say regarding our Mishnah. Mamai. Well, how do we know that that's the case? How do we know that this is how to understand the pasuk in our Mishnah? Dilma gzeres akasavi. Maybe it's just a gzeres akasav, which may not make sense, but maybe the din is the basada nehavi shicha v'ir lo nehavi shicha. You can't learn from shicha that you need to be by a field, if it's a field which is shen mishtamaras, as maybe it is the other way around. It's just exersa kosev, right? How do you know that, even though maybe logic would dictate this, but who knows that that's the case? Maybe there's just exersa kosev specifically by shicha, but you shouldn't learn that out to teach us when it comes to by chatzar shein mishmeres, like our Mishnah, by Metzia, that you have to actually physically be there. Maybe you don't have to be there. Omer kra lo soshuv lo kachdoi lo rabbi shichas ha'ir. So the pasuk says, "Lo sashuv l'kachta," you can no longer take it. That includes shichas ha'ir, which means that this pasuk is telling you that if you forgot, you have shicha, but it was not forgotten in the city, lo sashuv l'kachta, you can't take it. So therefore, the pasuk is specifically coming to teach us that that's not the case. The din is, again, in the city, it's not going to work at all. So therefore, again, it teaches us because he has to be there. So how meboile lo lav? The little sashuv is come to tell you lav that you can't take shicha. If it's really a shicha, it belongs to the poor. No, imkein nemakra lo tikachenu. My little sashuv lo rabos shichas ha'ir. So the fact that we use a different language can teach us this din. V'kat meboile lo katanan. But we need the pasuk for another thing. It says like this: Shalafanav ein shicha, shalachorav yeshicha. That which is in front of you, that has the din of shicha. Again, shulafanav ein shicha. What's in front of you is not shicha. Says Rashi, b'shichas ha'kaitzer koi. When it's talking about the harvesting, yachid shehiskil liktzer, an individual is beginning to harvest, mirosh ashur, and he's in the beginning of the row, v'shachach lafanav, and he forgot stuff in front of him, ulacharav, and behind him. Shul acharav havi shicha. So only the stuff behind him is shicha. Shul afanav will havi shicha, because it's still in front of him. It's still in front of his eyes. So therefore, it's not considered like it's forgotten. But if it's behind him, then it's shicha. Why? Shehu bebal tashuv, because it's using this language of bal tashuv. Don't go back. What does bal tashuv means? It must mean that the stuff which is behind you, shul acharav, is shicha. Zeklal, kol shu bebal tashuv, shicha. Kol shu bebal tashuv, ain't shicha. So again, we have this pasuk to teach us this din that shicha applies to the stuff that's behind you, not what's still in front of you. So how could you tell me that it's coming to tell you it's referring to a case where a person makes this declaration in a city that it's not a valid declaration? So Amar Avashi Amar Kra, yeah. Rabba Shicha Seir. Okay, fine. So we need to use a different drasha. It says Lager Yasav Lamane, yeah. So therefore that's coming to tell us this extra word, it's coming to tell us Shicha Seir. V'chein Amar Ula V'husha Aymin B'tzad Sedehu. Which is again just concretizing what we said in our Mishnah, that in order for it to work, this kinyan chatzer, which is a chatzer shein Mishnah Maris, you have to physically be by the field. Of course, Rabbi Gamliel is always on a boat. Rabbi Gamliel, he made the following declaration. He said the following: 10% in which I'm going to eventually separate. So Rashi says, Niskar Shlo Iser Masraisov. He forgot that he didn't separate he had tevel on dry land. And he wanted to separate it quickly, as of course there's possibility that someone will end up eating tevel in his house. So he said, let 10% Nasan Yoshua. Why Yoshua? So Rashi says, Rabbi Yeshua Bar Chananya Shahai Imo Basfina. He was on the boat. This is like a yacht, I guess, right? Like a party boat. Who Levi? He actually happened to be a Levi, and therefore he would be able to take the Meiser Rishon. So that would be very helpful. That Rabbi Yeshua Bar Chananya, who was a Levi, would be able to take. He's like the owner. Now he's on the boat. He's not there. We're next to the food, but still, he will be the owner of this. As we continue in Yud Alpha Mid Beis, but there's more to be taken than just Meiser Rishon. He says V'mkomo muskulo. This is an important line. And the place wherever that produce is, he will rent. It'll rent it out to him. We'll see why he has to say that. The Easter Acher, another 10%. Shani Asan Lamoid Nasan Lekiva ben Yosef. He's going to give it to Akiva ben Yosef, says Rashi. Gaboy hoya ba'oisa shana shnas meiser ani hoisa. So it was either year 3 or 6 of the Shemitah cycle, in which instead of meiser sheni, there's meiser ani to give 10% to the poor. So Akiva ben Yosef, who is the Gabbai Tzedakah, he was involved kadesh yiskabel aniyim. And again, I'm going to rent out that place. Now, the Chi Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva, B'tzad Tzedeu, Shel Rabbi Gamliel Hayoimdin. They weren't by the field. They were on the boat. They were bopping on the boat. So the question is, what do we see? It still works. You can still be kaina al kinyan chatzer, even though you're not there. And l'chayra, we're talking about a case which it's ena mishtamaris. L'chayra, that would be the kasha. So Amalei. So we say, Damil Hai Murabanan Kidoi Gamri Inchi Shmaisa. It almost gives the impression like they're not so engaged in understanding the sugya. Kiasul Sur Armilhu Hachi Armar Ula Hachi O Svite. This was the framework of the question. Armalei Humar Rabban Rabbi Gamliel Matatli Agam Makarkoi Hiknoahem. This has nothing to do with Kinyan Chatzer. The way that he was able to get them to acquire this is through a kinyan agav. Says Rashi, "V'amishum detikni lehem min kaimim materas chatzer," because that wouldn't work. Rather, nechasim she'ein lehem achrayis nikni min nechasim sheish lehem achrayis bekesef, mishanos on a kesef, etc. So, if you have land, so you can be kind of the metaltalin agav the kark, which is discussed at great length in Kedushin. So that's what it is. It's not a kinyan chatzer, it was a kinyan agav. Rabbi Zera accepted this answer, and Rabbi Abba lo kibla. For some reason, he didn't accept that answer. Rabbi Shapra Abba lo kibla. Actually, it's a good thing that you didn't accept this answer so fast. Doesn't make any sense. If all he was trying to do was a kinyan, why would he have to have done this kinyan agav? He could have just done a kinyan sudr. He could have just given them there could have been an exchange of a kerchief, and then by doing that, that would have been enough. Says Rashi, Lomo loy lekabel mehen mois. He had to take money from them because he rented it out. Ela tavas hana enoi mamoin liknus men b'chalipin. So the reason why you can't do chalipin is because they don't really own this. Rabbi Kiva is not going to own this produce. He's the gabbai to give it to poor people. So this is only considered to be tovas hana, for example, by him. Hachanami tovas hana enu mamoin liknus al gabi karka. So it shouldn't work either through a kinyan agav. That's why they didn't like that answer. So Velohi, that's not true. Matnois kahuna, when it comes to giving gifts to the kayan, like meiser, or giving, let's say, meiser rishon nesinik sibhu, it says that there has to be an element of giving. Chalipin derech mekach umemcherhu. Chalipin is a business transaction. So mataltal and agav mikarka nesina alimtahi. However, when it comes to a kinyan agav, that is a valid nesina. Says Rashi, mutter lahaknos matnos kahuna al gabi karka. So you certainly are allowed to do a kinyan agav that way. So again, let's look at Rashi. Nesina ksibe kedeksiv v'nosata lelevi zemaiser rishon legil yosel mamana zemaiser ani lafikach asar lahaknoisim besuder. Actually, since you're giving it, you can't use a kinyan sudar when it comes to giving over meiser and the like. The derech mekachu shezen noisen lo keil tachteim v'nira ze ke meichen loy. It looks like a sail. So you cannot simply do a kinyan sudar. It will not work. But what will work is a kinyan agav. Rav Papa says really it was Taurus Chatzer. He didn't with Rabbi Gamliel's thought process. So the question is, how could it work? Don't you need them to be there? And Chatzer has to be, you have to be in front of the place. So das acheres makna oisan shani. It's different over here because we're dealing with a das acheres. Rabbi Gamliel really used a kinyan Chatzer, but here he didn't require them to be by the field, since Rabbi Gamliel is giving it to them. Mashenkin, when it comes to our Mishnah, because we're talking about a Metzia, which is Hefker, so therefore, because there's no owner, so there you actually have to physically be there. So that's a huge distinction. Because there's a Das Acheres, and Rabbi Gamliel is wishing to gift it, so therefore in that situation, the kinyan Chatzer can work even if that person is not there. Umanat Tamra. And how do we know to say such a thing? Did not. Our Mishnah. You see an object that you wish to acquire, which is from Hefker. That you're running after it, umegian, and you're able to actually grab hold of it, you're able to reach it. He said, how about when it comes to a gift? So Kibumine Reb Abba Bar Kahana Afal Pisha Ratzach Reihin V'Ein Megian. So he said that even if you couldn't reach it, but it was a gift, then it still would work. So what do you mean? Why is a gift different? My timer. Mishum Das Acheres Makna Oisin Shani. So again, when we're dealing with Das Acheres, therefore that's the reason why it will work, and therefore you don't need to come on to Kinyan Agav. The truth is that even a Kinyan Chatzer will work in this instance. Question 12. Mehem atamim shenemru al kach she'ein matnais kahuna niknus hakoyin b'chalipin. Why does it not work for a koyin when it comes to chalipin? So either because it's only tovas hana, and she'ein tovas hana sheish Yisrael b'matanos chashuva mamoin. It's not considered to be mamoin to be able to do chalipin, or because nesiniksiv b'matanis a chalipin derech mekach hamemcharhu. And therefore, because it's derech mekach hamemchar, as we saw in Rashi, that would not work. So that was question 12. And therefore, because it's derech mekach hamemchar, so therefore it's not valid. Okay. Derech mekach hamemchar shezeh noisen lo keil tachteim v'nira zeh kemoichran loy, said Rashi. So that was one reason as to why it will why you cannot do matnos kahuna, because matnos kahuna is in the sina and chalipin is derech mecha chamemcher. That's the reason why it doesn't work. Alternatively, because chalipin doesn't work because tavas hana inu mamoin liknois memenu chalipin. So those are the two possible answers to this question. Okay, let's continue. Amle Rav Shimi or Rav Papa. Hari gate the das acheres. When it comes to a din of a get, a man giving his woman a get. So in that situation, there's two parties. There's someone giving it over to them, and therefore, as we're saying, l'chayra, why king chachi should have to be around. Nonetheless, how we get the das acheres maknois of yom ula v'husha menes basad beiso b'tzad chatzera? Why does she have to be nearby? L'chayra, she shouldn't have to be nearby. No, shani get the isabal karcha. Well, get is different because you can give it to her by force. So Moscow Rav Sheshes Rav Ravidi V'lav Kavachaymahu. I understand that should be the opposite then. Ma get the isabal karche, where the person has to accept it no matter what. The woman, you have to physically be there. So matana de medaita l'koshikain. When it comes to matana, you don't even have to be around. Certainly, you should have to be around. El Omer Avashi gives a different teretz. Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Chatzer is raboy mishum yad. The whole reason why we say a chatzer works, that you can put it in her chatzer and then it'll be a divorce, is because of a yad. V'gora mishlichus, and it's no worse than the din of shlichus. So what does that mean? So Gabi get the chayvula. A woman getting divorced is detrimental. So ein chav adam el b'fanav. So therefore, it can only be done in front of her. So if, let's say, the chutzner is like a shliach, so then the shliach, if you will, cannot be makabel it without her consent. She has to be there. So therefore, the reason why she has to be in the presence of her chutzner is not because for kinyan chutzner to work, but because it's a chov, it's like a din of shlichus. And the reality is that you can't do something which is detrimental for a person shol b'fanav. Gami matana, when it comes to these gifts, a meiser ani meiser rishon, the schusulo, you're getting a gift. Zachan adam shol b'fanav, and therefore in that situation, it's not necessary for you to actually physically be there. Okay, we'll actually stop there, and let's see maybe a question. Question TA 27. But Masan of Gamliel was a kingdom Hikna hamaiser bariloyim sansadehu. How does that work? So as we saw, this is TA 27. Either because it's considered to be a matana, and therefore it's allowed to be given. Papa says das acheres makna oisa shani, that it's given to a different person. It's given from a person to the next, and therefore it works. Actually, the way that the question is, how did it work? So the other answer is it was not actually a kinyan chatzer. It wasn't an actual kinyan chatzer. Rather, it was kinyan agav. So the two answers that they wanted was it was a kinyan agav, or maybe it was a kinyan chatzer, but das acheres makna shani. So that is the second answer for TA 27. So again, the first answer is Pashit, the one he says muskulo, is that we're talking about a case of a kinyan agav, that Rabbi Gamliel metaltali agav mikarkoi hikna lahem. So therefore it was a kinyan agav, and therefore that's totally different. The mechanics of that kinyan are completely different. TB 28. Mehematamim she'amru al kach shein matnos kahuna niknas al kain b'chalipin. So this is, of course, the same question as question 12. So I wrote chalipin zeh b'kinyan mecher mekach memcher vo b'loshin nesina. Good. Ein tovas hana yochel liknois b'chalipin. Correct. Adkan.